Thank you for joining us to learn about the National Voluntary Farm-Level Crop Biosecurity Standard and Producer Guide for the Grains and Oilseeds industry. This presentation is brought to you by the Canadian Plant Health Council, which plays a vital role in supporting plant health across Canada, working with industry stakeholders and producers, federal, provincial, and territorial governments, and academia. In the following slides, we'll dive into the topic of biosecurity and why it is important. We will then go over the Farm-Level Crop Biosecurity Standard and Producer Guide and how implementing their key target outcomes can support grains and oilseeds producers in managing plant health risks and protecting crops from pests and subsequent crop losses. The standard is voluntary, but is critical for maintaining crop health and sustainability in agriculture. Farm-level biosecurity is a series of management practices designed to prevent, minimize, and manage the introduction, spread, and release of plant pests. Plant pests can harm crops by causing reduced yields and increasing production costs. A proactive strategy to protecting crops from plant pests enables optimal crop health and productivity and is critical in maintaining the sustainability and profitability of the Canadian agricultural sector. It also ensures continued access to domestic and export markets and assists in opening new markets. Implementing strong biosecurity management practices is the first and often most effective line of defense to reduce risks from plant pests. Why is farm-level biosecurity important? As mentioned, plant pests have a direct impact on the profitability of farming by reducing yields and increasing costs. In addition, the success of Canada's agricultural exports is linked to the excellent phytosanitary status of our crops and crop products. Phytosanitary certification confirms that Canadian plants and plant products are free from pests of concern of the importing countries and are compliant with the relevant international standards and regulations for plant health, ensuring safe trade and preventing the spread of harmful pests across borders. Demonstrating minimal phytosanitary risk is key to maintaining existing export markets as well as opening and expanding new markets. By adopting biosecurity measures, you help ensure that Canadian products remain competitive on the world stage. Farm-level biosecurity does not have to be complicated. Incorporating simple measures into your everyday farm management practices can go a long way. Small, consistent actions are the most effective way to protect your crops and prevent the costly consequences of pest outbreaks. By making biosecurity part of your daily routine, you safeguard your farm and your future. The primary responsibility for biosecurity falls on farm owners and managers. You are the ones who ensure that crops are protected. Developing a written biosecurity plan is encouraged, and this can be done with the help of crop specialists or consultants. It is also important to get cooperation from visitors and service personnel. Everyone on the farm should follow biosecurity protocols. A biosecurity plan starts with a thorough risk assessment to evaluate potential threats. This includes monitoring everyone entering, working on, and exiting the farm, examining pathways for the introduction, spread, or escape of pests of concern. This includes pests that are already established in the area or invasive pests, those pests that are not known to occur in the region, and identifying preventative methods to manage or minimize the risk of these pests. The plan should focus on three key components. First, exclusion or preventing pests from entering the farm. Second, management or preventing pests from spreading within the farm. And third, containment or ensuring pests do not escape for the farm and spread to neighboring locations. A farm biosecurity plan will include elements associated with the farm location and layout, operational routines, and crop health management practices. It is important to keep in mind that each farm will have different risks, so your plan should be customized to address your own specific challenges. A national farm-level biosecurity planning guide was put in place to encourage producers to implement the use of sound crop production practices that protect crop health and maximize profits, although they do not guarantee protection from all potential pests. The planning guide identifies the key elements, considerations, and critical points of biosecurity intervention that apply to producers and handlers of agricultural crops. These preventive guidelines are not all-inclusive, but are generally accepted as beneficial management practices for most agricultural crops. One biosecurity plan will not fit the needs of every farm operation, and thus biosecurity plans should be developed to meet the specific needs of each farm. Each operation should incorporate these practices into daily routines that are appropriate for specific high-risk pests. Producers are also encouraged to review their production practices in relation to pest prevention on a frequent basis and ensure their strategies are carried out. An effective biosecurity plan is one that is flexible and open to new knowledge and technology as it becomes available. There are 4 national voluntary farm-level biosecurity standards and guides for crop-based sectors: grains and oilseeds, potato, greenhouse, nursery, and floriculture, and fruit and tree nut. The crop biosecurity standards and producer guides are resources designed to help farmers and producers implement effective biosecurity measures within the farm and are meant to complement existing provincial and trade association guides, manuals, and certification programs. Their purpose is to, first, define biosecurity and highlight its importance in protecting crops. Second, provide a proactive approach to managing biosecurity risks. This includes strategies to minimize the introduction and spread of pests, which ultimately saves time and resources and results in higher quality yields and lower costs. And third, describe potential risks and offer risk mitigation tools to address them effectively. As an example, pests can be introduced to a farm through various inputs such as seeds, water, and soil. To reduce this risk, it's important to use preventive measures, such as sourcing high-quality seeds or those that have been tested and verified to be pest-free. Risk mitigation is a process that will identify, assess, and reduce the impact of potential risk, in this case, the introduction of harmful pests to your farm, to minimize loss. The biosecurity standards and producer guides are a practical framework for producers, equipping them with the knowledge and tools to enhance on-farm biosecurity while aligning with other industry and regional efforts. The biosecurity standards and producer guides were collaboratively developed, drawing on a wide range of expertise. The Biosecurity Standard and Producer Guide for the Grains and Oilseeds industry was developed in 2011. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency, working with Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada and the Canada Grains Council, established a Grains and Oilseeds Biosecurity Advisory Group to guide development. This advisory group additionally included members from the Canadian Grain Commission, provincial governments, and industry associations and farmers. The development process included a literature review of key topics, a gap analysis of existing farm-level programs, farmer consultation, and ongoing feedback and input from the advisory group, CFIA, and industry experts. The National Voluntary Farm-Level Biosecurity Standard for the Grains and Oilseeds industry is a national reference document which provides guidance to producers to develop their biosecurity plan. The standard is accompanied by a producer guide which provides more detailed commodity-specific best practices and other options to be considered to achieve the risk mitigation goals identified in the standard. The standard of the grains and oilseeds industry includes an introduction to biosecurity and why it is important. Then the standard describes 4 main categories for potential risk introduction and provides targeted outcomes, risk mitigation tools, and considerations for each. The categories for potential risk include entry of pests to the farm, movement of pests within the farm, exit of pests from the farm, and the management process. Finally, at the end of the standard is a self-assessment tool to determine the need for a biosecurity management plan. Over the next several slides, I will walk you through each of the categories for potential risk introduction. The first is entry of pests to the farm. The standard describes key considerations that need to be undertaken to achieve main target outcomes in preventing the entry of pests to the farm through various pathways. Crop inputs have the potential to introduce soil-borne diseases, weeds, insects, and other pests to the farm. Therefore, the first target outcome is to ensure all crop inputs are sourced and managed to minimize or eliminate such biosecurity risks. This is done by ensuring seeds are sourced from production zones free from pests of concern or are certified, tested, or treated prior to planting. It is also important to use trusted suppliers and transporters for all crop inputs entering the farm, such as fertilizers, compost, manure, or when disposing of bioindustrial waste at the farm. Look for suppliers and transporters that are known to implement a biosecurity risk management protocol. It is also critical to monitor field drainage and surface water runoff regularly, as water is an important pathway for pests. Controlled water management, such as grass-covered waterways or planned drainage systems, can help mitigate these risks. The next target outcome is to minimize or eliminate the biosecurity risks introduced with farm equipment access to the farm. Equipment entering the farm can be a pathway for introducing soil and plant material that can contain weed seeds and other plant pests. This is why it is important to have designated areas for inspection of farm crop inputs and equipment, as well as designated areas where equipment can be cleaned or treated prior to entering production areas. Excessive movement of soil can be avoided by minimizing the movement of equipment over wet soil. Producers are encouraged to work with reliable suppliers and operators who adhere to strict cleaning protocols before leaving the area in which they last worked. The third target outcome that would prevent entry of pests is to minimize or eliminate the biosecurity risks introduced by non-agricultural equipment to the farm. This can include equipment used for pipeline and oil or gas well development or other soil movement activities not directly related to agriculture. Operators of such equipment need to follow strict cleaning protocols before entering the farm and after leaving the farm. This can be managed by incorporating equipment cleaning requirements in land access agreements. The fourth target outcome to prevent entry of pests to the farm is to minimize or eliminate the biosecurity risks introduced by people having access to the farm. Anyone who arrives at a farm from another area may inadvertently introduce soil or plant material carrying pests. Pest entry can be prevented by establishing sanitation protocols and guidelines for farm staff and visitors prior to entering the farm, or when moving between production areas and when leaving the farm. It is also important to post visible signage to inform farm visitors about biosecurity risks and to indicate the biosecurity measures to be taken, such as parking in designated areas away from production areas, reporting to the office prior to entering the farm, cleaning boots, or wearing protective boot wear. Producers should also consider keeping a visitor and service personnel log to track who has been on the farm and their potential exposure to biosecurity risks. The fifth and last target outcome for entry of pests to the farm is to minimize or eliminate the biosecurity risks introduced by farm employees and management. Movement of farm personnel, vehicles, or equipment between farms or within different areas of the same farm can inadvertently spread pests through soil, plant material, or other contaminants. Assessing the impact of traffic flow of people, vehicles, and equipment can prevent the introduction of pests. Therefore, it is important to proactively implement farm-specific procedures to minimize the introduction of pests when traveling within the farm. For example, making sure there are appropriate cleaning protocols when moving between production areas or when entering or exiting the farm. The second category for potential risk introduction is through the movement of pests within the farm. While preventing pests from entering the farm is critical, it is equally important to manage their potential spread once they are already present in the farm. To minimize the propagation or transmission of pests within the farm, it is important to manage crop selection and field susceptibility to a specific crop or variety. The susceptibility of a field to a number of pest problems can increase dramatically depending on the sequence of crops grown and the variety selected. For many plant diseases, there can be a low base level of infection that may only do minimal damage unless allowed to flourish in an ideal environment. To achieve this target outcome, producers can use various strategies such as implementing crop rotation, which can break the life cycle of diseases or pests, choosing resistant varieties to delay pest or disease development, following label instructions for seed and chemical use, keeping good field records, and monitoring and improving field drainage. Controlling the movement of farm equipment and people within the farm is also a good strategy to minimize or eliminate the potential spread of pests within the farm. This includes cleaning equipment between use in different fields of the farm, particularly when it is known that a pest is present in a field. Sequencing field activities can also help. Complete field operations on clean areas first before traveling into areas with known pests to minimize transfer and the number of cleanings required. Cleaning boots or clothing when moving from infested fields to other fields is also an important measure to implement. Last but not least, the spread of pests can be minimized or eliminated when timely scouting, monitoring, assessment, and decision-making are implemented on the farm. All of these activities need to be implemented, along with good record keeping. In addition, when a pest is found at the farm, Ensure it is correctly identified through a lab or by consulting with agronomists and other industry experts who can also provide advice on how to manage the pest. It is also important to keep all farm staff aware and informed about the latest pest alerts. The third category of potential risk introduction is to prevent pests from leaving the farm, not only to protect neighboring farms and regions, but also to maintain the integrity of the agricultural supply chains and to guarantee continued and new domestic and export market access. Minimizing the spread of pests to other farms is carried out by ensuring any transport or field equipment that is leaving the farm is inspected and is clean of soil, weeds, seeds, or pests. The same applies for people leaving the farm. The introduction or spread of pests from one farm to another can also be minimized by taking into consideration all risk factors associated with crop transfer, sale, or storage. This means keep storage facilities clean and free from pests. Inspect the storage facilities for the presence of pests. Implement storage management techniques such as drying or moving the grain to minimize pest occurrence. Retain grain samples for testing for pests of concern prior to export, and appropriately dispose of waste material or unmarketable product. The last category to consider for potential risk introduction is the overall management process. It is important that biosecurity management practices are developed, documented, understood, and implemented by all management and staff. For effective biosecurity management, it is essential to know what to do, ensure it gets done, and maintain proper records to verify that activities are being carried out. To that end, it is important to create a comprehensive biosecurity plan tailored to your farm by assessing the risks and identifying the biosecurity measures that fit your needs. Further, steps must be taken to ensure that the biosecurity plan is implemented and that all staff members are committed to following the identified practices. Keeping accurate and thorough records is critical in future decision-making. Training staff to monitor and report suspected pest problems is also a critical part of the biosecurity plan, including reporting any pests of concern to plant health authorities or specialists. Finally, a key consideration to minimize or eliminate the introduction and transfer of biosecurity risks is through active external communication. Clear communication with suppliers, neighbors, and others is important to ensure that the procedures that are required to protect farms are understood and followed. This is achieved by sharing a copy of the biosecurity plan with staff and anyone who needs to be in the know when entering the farm. Putting up signage will also inform staff and visitors of biosecurity risks at key entry and exit points on the farm. It is also important to stay connected with various networks to be made aware of pest presence or spread, and to regularly consult with professional agronomists or crop advisors if you have any pests of concern. At the end of the standard, in an appendix, there is a self-assessment tool designed to assess an individual farm's biosecurity management processes to help determine the requirements for a biosecurity management plan. This is an essential first step in determining whether a formal biosecurity management plan is needed, and if so, what the priorities of that plan should be. Although every farm is exposed to some level of risk in each category, the degree of exposure and the potential consequences may vary widely for each individual farm, depending on region, crop mix, and management practices. This tool is particularly valuable because it acknowledges that no two farms are exactly alike. The standard is also accompanied by a producer guide. The guide provides additional guidance for each target outcome to help farmers determine their needs and presents example risk mitigation procedures and management considerations. It includes several tools and appendices, such as an example of a documented biosecurity management plan, an equipment log, a communication plan outline, and more. We would like to thank the Grains and Oilseeds Biosecurity Advisory Group for developing the standard and producer guide. We are also thankful to the Canadian Plant Health Council and the Biosecurity Working Group for their expertise, guidance, and contributions to these video podcasts. Finally, we want to thank all grains and oilseeds producers for your daily efforts to protect your farms from pests through implementation of biosecurity measures.